Since day one, we've questioned whether Donald Trump's Commission on Election Integrity was simply a biased panel bent on voter suppression. Well, now we know at least one member wants that to be the case. In a redacted email obtained by the Campaign Legal Center sent to the Justice Department in February, Hans von Spakovsky, now a member of the commission, argued that allowing Democrats or even mainstream Republicans or academics to serve on the commission would, quote, guarantee its failure. Joining me now is Ari Berman of Mother Jones, author of Give Us the Ballot, The Modern Struggle for Voting Rights in America, Janai Nelson of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and former Vermont Governor Howard Dean. Ari, this commission that was put together includes some very choice and interesting members. Tell us who Hans von Spakovsky is.
Hans von Spakovsky is with the Heritage Foundation, which is picking judges for Donald Trump, among other things. He was a longtime official in the Bush Justice Department. He's really been leading the effort, along with Chris Kobach, to implement strict voter ID laws, to implement voter suppression measures. He has been pushing the myth of widespread voter fraud for decades, and he wrote this smoking gun email that was released the same day that the Presidential Commission on Election Integrity had their second meeting, where he called for excluding Democrats, academics, and I thought most revealingly, mainstream Republicans from this commission, which shows that the fix was in from the very beginning. This had nothing to do with election integrity. It was all about lying about voter fraud in order to build support for policies that suppress the vote.
And let's just read just a little bit of that email, which initially there was a little dishonesty when reporters tried to ask who authored that email. Ultimately, Heritage came clean and admitted that Hans von Spakovsky, who's from Heritage but on the commission, actually wrote it. And he wrote, "There isn't a single Democratic official that will do anything other than obstruct any investigation of voter fraud and issue constant public announcements criticizing the commission on what it is doing, making claims that it is engaged in voter suppression." So, Janai, you know, the question becomes, if he's saying that, is that an admission that they are attempting to build a false case for voter suppression, or is he trying to say that he thinks that Democrats are sort of zealously just refusing to believe that this mythical thing exists?
Well, we know that this commission has been based on a myth from its inception. You can see that from the origins of this commission and all the rhetoric that the president engaged in from the campaign trail on to following his presidency, that there are mythical voters out there who are trying to impersonate others. And we know that that is absolutely not the case. There have been numerous studies that have not been debunked that establish quite firmly that voter fraud is a myth. And this statement, I think, just reveals the animus of this commission, that it has no legitimacy, that its conclusions have been predetermined, and that these individuals who have been placed on the commission are there to drive an agenda of voter suppression, and there's just no turning back from it. There are several lawsuits, of course, revealing what the animus is behind these efforts, and ours is one of them. At the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, we have sued, and importantly, we have revealed that one of the main driving forces is the disenfranchisement of Black and Latino voters. We should not shy away from calling that racism what it is, and pointing out that that is very much a part of the intention of this commission.
And, you know, Governor Dean, you know, leading this charge is a guy named Chris Kobach, who people who've been following the issues of voter suppression or reading Ari Berman over the years know is one of the biggest zealots against in attempting to curtail the right to vote of particularly immigrants or, you know, brown folks, Black and brown folks. But this is what he wrote in Breitbart, where he's also a columnist, last Thursday, and he wrote in exclusive, "It appears that out-of-state voters changed the outcome of the New Hampshire U.S. Senate race." And this is Chris Kobach, who is the former Secretary of State of Kansas, and this is him on Tuesday.
It's simply looking at some of the numbers, hard statistics about individuals who used a out-of-state driver's license to vote on the same day, you know, register and vote on the same day in New Hampshire. And this has been an issue the legislature has been grappling with for some time here.
Now, of course, that is not an issue they've been grappling with because, in fact, same-day registration is legal in New Hampshire. A lot of college students vote that way. And Governor Dean, the Secretary of State of New Hampshire, who's on this commission, has disputed the idea that the outcome of the Senate race was changed by so-called illegal voting. You've gone so far as to say that if the gentleman who's from New Hampshire doesn't step down and walk away from this commission, or if it's not disbanded, that New Hampshire actually should lose their first-in-the-nation primary status. Explain.
Well, the reason that New Hampshire should lose their first in the nation's primary status, they've actually passed a bill that outlaws students voting. It's unconstitutional. They are Gardner. Look, this is a committee of crackpots, and I think Gardner's a crackpot too. He lied to say, when he said that the New Hampshire doesn't suppress votes. They have a bill that's been passed by the Republicans in the House and the Senate and signed by the Republican governor, which now makes it illegal, essentially, for students to vote unless they get a New Hampshire driver's license, which is something that most students aren't going to want to do unless they come from New Hampshire. The United States Supreme Court has said that students may vote where they are domiciled, which includes being in a college in New Hampshire if you've been there for 8 months. These are crackpots. They're dangerous crackpots. They're undermining the right to vote, and they are racist. And there's no way that we should have our first in the nation primary in the state of New Hampshire in a state which has just passed a voter suppression bill.
And Ari Berman, is there any evidence whatsoever that out-of-state voting, illegal voting, changed the outcome of the New Hampshire Senate race, which, of course, Mr. Kobach and company are upset was won by a Democrat?
No, there's absolutely no evidence of that claim, Joy. What people in New Hampshire did was they used out-of-state driver's licenses to vote on Election Day, which is legal in New Hampshire. They were simply following the law. These were college students and other people that did not need to have an in-state driver's license or register their car in the state. So this wasn't proof of anything illegal, and the fact that Kobach made this outrageous claim in advance of the second meeting of the commission and then made it at the commission was very, very revealing about how he and others are lying about voter fraud. And also, Joy, we should just point out the fact that he made it as a paid columnist for Breitbart, the so-called platform for the alt-right. We also learned that Kobach and other members of the commission are using personal emails to conduct the commission's business. That sounds pretty familiar, right, Joy? Don't you remember people chanting "lock her up" when Hillary Clinton did that exact thing? So this commission is illegitimate in so many ways. The more we learn about it, the worse it looks.
And Janai, how much of this is strictly racial? The idea that people like Chris Kobach and Mr. Hans von Spakovsky just believe that for some reason these black and brown voters are just by definition illegitimate. They shouldn't be voting. And how much of it is partisan and saying we're looking at the electorate and we're saying who tends to vote for Republicans and who tends to vote for Democrats. Let's try to erase as many of the Democrats as possible. How much of it's partisan and how much of you think is race?
Clearly, both issues are at play, but the racial dimension cannot be minimized in any way. What is really driving this wave of voter suppression laws, what's driving this commission, what drove this entire presidency, is the fact that there is a clear browning of America. Black and Latino voters are going to dominate the electorate if they are able to vote, if they are included in our democracy in a way that is proper and fair. And this commission and those who support it are doing everything possible to erect barriers to take us backwards, to take us back to a time before the Voting Rights Act, before the federal government had to intervene to ensure that African Americans and other voters of color in this country could have equal standing as citizens to exercise their fundamental right to vote.
Governor Dean, what should Democrats do regarding this commission?
I think we should, first of all, remove New Hampshire from its status as the first in the nation primary, because they were already suppressing all student votes from people who are going to Dartmouth, the University of New Hampshire, if they're not, if they have another driver's license. This is outrageous. That's the first thing. The second thing is this is being litigated all over the country. It should be litigated. And third of all, let's call this what it is. This is a fraudulent commission. It's run by frauds. The Vice President of the United States is involved in this commission. This administration believes that the way to win for Republicans is not to allow a large number of people to vote. The young and the black and the brown are being deprived of their votes under this administration. That is wrong. It's un-American, and it's not in keeping with a healthy democracy.
I'm going to give Howard Dean the last word there. Thank you very much. Ari Berman, Janai Nelson, Howard Dean, thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you. And still to come, how dare Hillary Clinton write a book? That's next.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.